Many say that each song on Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers represents a therapy session for Kendrick Lamar, and while I think that's partly true and he does play into it, how do you explain songs like We Cry Together? While I like this way of looking at the album, I feel like it's more so Kendrick's internal monologue doing the talking. Now, you can look at that as a form of therapy in itself, and you'd be right, but I feel the way people portray the album is that Kendrick is sitting down and talking to someone in each song, and that's not really the case. However, with the track we're discussing today, it actually is the case. How do we know this? Well, it's literally in the music video. Count Me Out very much plays as Kendrick's breakthrough, and that's even referenced by a narrator at the beginning of the track. Something I think is very underrated about Mr. Morale is the sequence of the track list. Disc 1 very much deals with a cluttered Kendrick. He's able to pinpoint the things that bother him, but apart from a handful of songs, he's not really defining the why, and that's what Disc 2 is for. When you compare the two, the depth and tracks of Disc 2 go in much further than the songs on Disc 1. I believe this is because until Count Me Out, there's no big breakthrough moment, and that's exactly what the song's purpose is. Prior to that though, we get Purple Hearts, which seems to be most people's least favorite song on the album, but it's actually really important in concept because it ties both sides of the album together. I can't make a video about Count Me Out without discussing Purple Hearts, because it works as both the epilogue to Disc 1 and the prologue to Disc 2. Purple Hearts is ultimately a song about love and God, but I feel that the title of it represents an overarching theme for Mr. Morale. Obviously, a Purple Heart is something that the US military gives out to soldiers who are wounded or killed in battle, so I believe it's simply a play on Kendrick's own turmoil. He's been through a lot his entire life, and since he's about to have his big breakthrough, at this point he feels like he got through the war with himself. Now, when I mention the war with himself, I'm not saying it's over, but at this point in the album, he's willing to confront his trauma with the help of others. When you go back to Disc 1, the first 3 songs or so have Kendrick addressing his issues, but he sort of deflects them by pointing out that the whole world has these issues. N95 is all about how people hide who they really are, United in Grief says that everyone has trauma in their own way, and Worldwide Steppers says that everyone has their own skeletons in the closet. Even at the beginning of Father Time, Kendrick and Whitney talk in the opening skit, and he says everybody needs therapy as an excuse for him not to go. Count Me Out is a therapy session Kendrick needed to better understand his situation and literally lay it all out there. If Anti-Diaries, Mother I Sober, or even Savior appeared on the first disc, it wouldn't make any sense. Many tracks on Disc 1 play as event session, while the tracks on Disc 2 are much more calculated. In the music video with Kendrick speaking to his therapist, she mentions that he texted her at 2 in the morning saying he feels like he's falling. When she asks why, he simply replies, life. Count Me Out is all about the events that led him here, his resilience, and what the future looks like for him. The Genius summary states that the track focuses on Kendrick calling out a once significant person in his life who he loves to prove wrong. However, I strongly believe that he's referring to himself here apart from a few specific lines. It's kinda cool how this track ties into his competitive nature mentioned on Father Time, except this time he's competing with no one but himself. When he repeats, I love when you count me out, this is speaking on his resilience and how every time he's at his lowest point, he knows he's gonna fight back and make it to better days. Now, I'm not gonna do a full lyric breakdown for this video because almost every line on the song is meant to be taken very literal. There are a few really important ones that we will address, but I want to take a moment to talk about the end of the song. This is me, and I'm blessed. Anybody fighting through the stress, anybody fighting through the next rhyme probably would have ended with steps, as that's what we hear at the end of the song. I don't know how I never made this connection until now, but it's literally in the album title, The Big Steppers. We hear these tap shoes in multiple other songs, and we actually get a reference to them from Whitney at the end of We Cry Together when she says to stop tap dancing around the conversation. For the Genius annotation on Count Me Out, they label the fighting through the steps lyric as trying to remember complicated dance steps and ultimately misstepping. This is super interesting because we hear these tap shoes throughout most of the songs on the album, and if you actually pay attention to the taps, you can hear the dancer getting more and more skilled in each song they appear. As far as I could tell, Savior is the final song these steps appear, and the taps in that song sound much more put together than the ones on Father Time or We Cry Together. With all that said, we can conclude that everyone is their own big stepper, and they either tap dance around their problems or practice the dance until they get it right and fix them. The album album shows us that the dance won't be easy, but you'll never be able to heal without the hard work. This is why Disc 1 is labeled The Big Steppers, and Disc 2 is labeled Mr. Morale. Count Me Out plays into both of these meanings, as Kendrick finally lays out what he's been tap dancing around, but he also feels like he's falling because, like we said before, he's fighting through the steps. Every emotion been deprived, even my strong points couldn't survive if I didn't learn to love myself, forgive myself 100 times. This is the point in the song when Kendrick finally realizes that it's up to him and only him to work through his trauma no matter how hard it will be. He understands he's done wrong in the past, but through love and forgiveness for himself, he's able to make his breakthrough. I believe this is also the moment he kills off the old pieces of himself that prevented him from healing, as he says nobody but the mirror is looking for his fall off. We then get a bridge that plays deeper into this. It's gonna take more than pride to stop me. Call 911, I caught a body. Sun up now and yesterday is fading. Healing's only about a mile away. The only way I can interpret this is that Kendrick shed off the old version of himself that kept hurting him with guilt and shame. I believe this is the same version of himself that he's talking to in the chorus, and at this point that person is finally defeated and he's able to move on. You said I'd feel better if I just worked hard without lifting my head up, that left me fed up. This lyric plays into the themes we discussed in Father Time, as it directly takes aim at a capitalistic society. While everyone copes in different ways, whether it's through drugs, gambling, whatever, work is also a coping mechanism for a lot of people that goes under the radar. For many men specifically, it's a way to distract them from issues going on in their personal lives, and it's usually something they feel a sense of purpose from. There's nothing wrong with the latter half of that sentence. However, in the modern age, working hard without ever taking a break for yourself is often praised way more than taking personal time to deal with your issues. The genius annotation from Anda Banda says Kendrick is reflecting on this unhealthy obsession that society has attached to work, and is explaining how his dedication to work was never fulfilling and was ultimately nothing but a temporary coping mechanism to dull the trauma that he could only really address through self-reflection and therapy. I don't believe the line is a direct reference to his father, but it shows that the way he grew up ultimately affected the way he views work. Some put it on the devil when they fall short, I put it on my ego, Lord of all lords. No matter who the evil entity is within your religion, they are usually the first person blamed when things go wrong in life. Kendrick argues that our egos are actually the villains, and we must drop them if we ever want to fully heal. Apart from maybe Purple Hearts or Mirror, I feel that this is the most triumphant song on the record, and is the point in the track list where Kendrick finally considers choosing himself. Even though Crown is a much more melancholy song, I do feel that it picks up where Count Me Out left off, because Count Me Out is Kendrick's revelation, while Crown is the first time we see him take action for himself. We even hear it in the early lyrics of Count Me Out when he says, "This time around I trust myself, please everybody else but myself, all else fails I was myself." Then Crown obviously has the I can't please everybody refrain, which furthermore ties into Savior. I'm starting to get ahead of myself here, as this is a Count Me Out breakdown, but one of my favorite things about Mr. Morale is how each track has direct ties to the other ones on the album. Before we wrap up here, I want to give a shout out to Oklama, Soundwave, and everybody else on the production team, as this is easily one of the best beats on the album. I absolutely love the choir, the build up, and the big explosion in the chorus. Kendrick's rapping performance is incredible and sounds so good over that choir and those synths, and as this is probably my favorite song on the record, I'm really happy I get to cover it for the channel. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you want to support the channel, please like and subscribe, and if you want to double support the channel, my Patreon is linked in the description. You'll get early access to videos for $2 a month, and you can cancel at any time. Either way, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.